My toes are starting to defrost. The inlet's like this can be really useful for determining what the fault came up through. We get better. Valley residents dynamiting the aqueduct. Nothing like a good boulder dash to end the day. Last time on Across the Mojave. There we go. Basically the high elevation of my trip. 2,265 meters above sea level, or just shy of 7,450 feet. Now it's just a matter of trying to get down as far down this mountain as possible before it gets too dark. I think it's going to be a little dark for you guys to see anything yet, except maybe the direction of the dawn, but I'm just leaving my little camp now. I'm down a little canyon off the mesa. I did manage to lose about 200 meters of altitude get to the little canyon I wanted to, which was an adequate place to camp. Yep, up again at 4:30 a.m. for early start. Another long day. Need to get to Centennial Spring today in the Coso Range. Lots of alluvium today, and I know at least some of this alluvium I remember from the satellite pictures was not friendly alluvium. So it might take me a little bit of doing, so just wanted to get early start. I think basically I've been getting up at 4:30 or earlier every day for the latter part of the trip, so I think it's just a trend I'm going to continue here. Even the last day's not that bad of a day, I don't think, but I'll still get up at 4:30 just to get done with it earlier and can get home, because the plan is to drive home afterwards tomorrow. So anyway, first I need to climb out of this canyon, and then I can resume my going down the plateau. Oh, another thing I should mention is this is, as predicted, the coldest campsite yet. Back thermometer read 23, which is like -6 Celsius, something like that. Fortunately, I decided to put my water inside my tent preemptively. Although my my breakfast sandwich here is a little bit crunchy. I think the bread is frozen. That's okay, nothing wrong with a little extra crunch. I'm just starting to get some colors in the dawn now. Yeah, so I think I have to cross a couple of these canyons here to get over the ridge I want to go down. But it's not so bad because, other than this, all these rocks hiding in the grass. The good news is my toes are numb from the cold anyway, but that just means that when they wake up, they're going to be really unhappy. Oh, okay. I think this next ridge is the one I'm supposed to go to. One problem with being in a plateau is that if it's flat on top, it's hard to see down the edges, and then it's hard to tell where you're going. And there's the Sierras coming into view. Olancha Peak there, the big one on the right, where I'm heading for tomorrow afternoon. And that big white plain there is Owens Lake, which had water in it up until like 1925. But basically the reason it dried up is because of the Los Angeles aqueduct. The city of Los Angeles built an aqueduct, which we'll see tomorrow, that saps water from all the streams coming out of the Sierras. And without that water, this lake dried up. There used to be steamships that ran across it from the mines at Cerro Gordo, which is the next mountain, well, a few mountains north of here. There's a steamship that carried silver bullion from the mines across the lake to, I think actually to Olancha, or maybe one of the other towns near Olancha. And then it was dragged on down towards Los Angeles by mule teams, I believe. Anyway, so far ranges the Sierras, and then the intermediate range that's kind of far, that's the Coso Range. So that's where I'll be camping tonight. I think a little bit left of where we can see right now. So I'm trying to get to lower Centennial Spring, where I can get some more water, since I'm kind of running short. I think I have more than 3 liters left, which is a little bit on the short side for a long day, but hopefully it'll stay cool. Oh, I wasn't even paying attention. Now there's sunlight on the Sierras. Actually getting a really good view of the Sierras from here. Better even than last night, because last night we were on the top of the plateau, so the bottoms were cut off. So there's Mount Williamson, Mount Whitney, Mount Langley, some other peaks whose names I don't know. Olancha Peak there is the prettiest in the sunshine, where I'm hitting. Some other peaks I don't know the names of. Coso Range. It's probably the Argus Range, just right at the peak, and that's probably the Panamint Mountains again, way back there. You can see a reflection of some water down in Owens Lake. Well, once Owens Lake dried out, it started to become a major dust problem for the local communities, because all the dust from the lake bed, from the clays and salts, were getting picked up by wind into these massive dust clouds, which were bad for the health of the local residents. And so eventually a court ordered the city of Los Angeles to mitigate the dust, and so the solution was to periodically flood different parts of the lake with just enough water to keep the dust damp and keep it from blowing away. But it would have been something to see it when it was a real lake. Okay, well, we're coming up to a point here. I think this is going to be the ridge I'm heading down. In fact, you get a pretty good view of most of the rest of my day, actually, in addition to the Sierras. So you're going to be heading down this ridge. You can see there's a little hill out in the middle of the valley there. So right before that is, I think, Highway 190 across in the valley down there. And so we'll leave Malpais Mesa Wilderness, cross Highway 190, go over that hill, and you can see there's the alluvial Badlands from hell. You can see from here all that scribble scrabble down there of nasty canyons after nasty canyons. I have to cross that. Initially, I think I crossed the plain relatively straight the way I'm looking in order to get into the Coso Range wilderness. And I'm going to turn left and I'm going to follow the base of the Coso Range all the way up to that big canyon back there in the corner, that little dark corner, where I'll get water at lower Centennial Spring and head up the canyon a couple miles after that if I have time. But all of this alluvium looks terrible. Well, some of the alluvium in front of the mountain there doesn't look too bad, but there's a lot of canyons there. Those at least look like soft canyons. The part I'm dreading most is this Badlands behind this hill, where the alluvium is just in all these nasty, nasty little channels. I think that's going to be painful. But until then, just onwards and downwards. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a little bit rocky no matter how I go. In the cliff here, I notice you can see that this is a plagioclase containing basalt. So all these white crystals here are plagioclase, a feldspar mineral. So we'd call it a plagioclase porphyritic basalt. But to quote Darkwing Duck, let's get dangerous. It's actually not get dangerous. It's not good to get dangerous. Driver shown is on a closed course and is a professional driver, something like that. Okay, well, I've now reached the southwest corner of the Malpais Mesa Wilderness. I'm now the closest I can get to the the Coso Range Wilderness. So I just need to head across Highway 190 over this hill. Okay, I'm just gonna go for it. Not anyone there. Okay, I just need to get over this hill. This is like that slope I came down the other day, coming out of the Cottonwood Mountains, and I was like, well, I'm glad I don't have to come up this. The good news is this slope is not that high, so I should be to the top and not too long. Okay. Okay, so I believe the closest corner of the Coso Range Wilderness is just behind that brown corner of land that sticks out of there. So, that's where I need to head once I catch my breath. So I think in my original plan I was going to cut straight across these Badlands to that divide. I think instead I'm going to follow the divide of the Badlands instead, because that's going to be a lot easier than going up and down over every little canyon between here and there. Like you could try and minimize the distance spent outside of the wilderness, or you could try minimizing the time spent out of the wilderness. Minimizing the distance would tend to favor people doing straight line style missions. Minimizing time would that's probably more similar to what I'm doing actually. I got a family to go back to. My kid apparently misses me a lot, and it's making me a little sad. So I gotta get back home. It's about minimizing time for me. Up on the Badland Divide, there are all these little concretions where the sand has been stuck together in little golf ball sized balls by growth of some sort of mineral. I don't know if it's gypsum or calcite or what, but one problem I don't actually accounted for with trying to follow the divide is the divide is not very straight. Badlands like this are typically formed when relatively soft sediments are regionally uplifted, or perhaps it could also be the opposite, the local river baseline is dropped. In this case, these have probably been uplifted by some local fault. I'm not exactly sure what that would be, but maybe the range front fault that's sort of lifting up the Inyo Mountains and the Coso Mountains here. Anyway, we're coming out to what from a distance looked like the high point of the Badlands. Yeah, it looks like it is. So now we just need to find our way out that way towards the wilderness corner. Break for lunch. The clouds have really come out. A little cold and windy, but I think once I start walking I'll be warm enough. Yep. So now I'm basically just heading along the base of the Coso Range here, heading southeast of all directions, or south and east, but mostly south. Brr, that is a cold wind. Guess I better walk faster. So we're coming along here, still along the base of the Coso Range, crossing the alluvial fan. I noticed there are these slightly greenish white rocks cropping out of the alluvial fan here, and what these almost certainly are is volcanic ash. There's actually some right here. It's not really a good outcrop here, but yeah, this is definitely volcanic ash. It's been sitting around long enough that it's sort of sticking together a little bit and making cliffs. If you look at it, these ash layers, they're basically parallel on the slope to the same direction as the current alluvial fan. So that tells me these ash layers are very young. You know, not much older than the alluvial fan we're walking across. So probably within the last million years or so, I would have to guess, just from my geologic intuition. And the interesting thing about the Coso Range here is that the Coso Range hosts an active, or at least a geologically active volcanic field. And from time to time it erupts. And there's both basalt lava and there are more silica-rich lavas like rhyolite, which tend to explode when they erupt. And when you explode a rhyolite, you get a nice white ash like this. So I strongly suspect that these white ashes are erupted within the last million or years or so from the volcanic field that lies further south in this mountain range. Outcrop of the volcanic ash up close. You see it sort of falls in these layers. You know, as the eruption proceeds, you know, the violence of the eruption and various other things can change, getting, you know, make variations of color. These are just tiny particles of volcanic glass mostly. If you looked under a microscope, they'd be tiny little shards, at least in fresh ash. In this case, it's been sitting here weathering. It probably is mostly clay, but anyway, still heading around. I'm almost up to the corner of the mountain here, which is casting a shadow, which is probably going to make my GPS stop tracking, but what can you do? We just come around this dark corner of the mountain. Now we're heading, still following the base, or you might be able to see if I zoom in digitally, but there's some hills there, sort of aimed at the right of those hills. And the canyon in back is where Centennial Spring is. So hopefully I can get there, find some water, and then make it 2 more miles up the canyon before I camp. Before it gets too dark. That's the plan. Now if there's no water there, that's another problem, because I'm actually almost out of water. I just poured out the last of my water a few minutes ago. I still have more than a liter. I have like a liter and a third. The good news is my parents like camping, so they've already come out and they're camping tonight in the desert somewhere south of here anyway, so they can pick me up tomorrow. So I could get them on the satellite phone and get them to come bring me water, but I don't want to have to do that again, especially on the last day. It would just be a real downer. This sort of looks like limestone. It's, I don't know, there's sort of these layers here. Or maybe it's more of this volcanic ash, actually. That would make sense. But it doesn't weather like that. No, see, it's got this rough weathering surface like a limestone. I don't see crystals in it. And see, unlike the volcanic ash layers were mostly parallel to the slope, this one is tilted to the side. This is probably an older layer. Maybe from when there was a lake, like a Paleo Owens Lake in here. And this is lacustrine limestone that's pretty young, would be my guess. Anyway, I think my next goal is those hills there. I'm not exactly sure what my route through those hills is, honestly. But I think I'm to the right of the biggest hill, maybe to the left of the next hill over that. So I think I just need to find my way to the base of those canyons that lead up towards the hills and then shoot through there, and then I'm almost to the spring at that point. This has to be one of the densest Joshua Tree forests I've ever seen. Like, I'm actually gonna have to weave in and out between the trees. There's so many of them, and they're so stabby too, but in fact there are a lot of stabby plants here. It's actually sort of tricky to navigate through here. Back into the shadow of the mountain, and this time it's not even one that's super close, so it's definitely getting later. Must be after 4. I haven't looked at the time recently. Which wouldn't be so bad if I was planning to camp at Cottonwood Spring, but and so I would ideally like to get a couple miles past Cottonwood Spring so I don't have to cram that in tomorrow. Okay, well, we're finally coming into the canyon that leads to the pass that leads to the spring. Just saying that makes me tired. Yeah, I guess it's not clear I'm about ready to be done with this hike. These last days especially are way too long. So I have this canyon here, and look, we got a juniper. Good, I'll have some decent wood to burn tonight. And I'm pretty sure that I take the left fork here and head over this pass to my left is the plan. Oof. Getting steeper. This is the sort of thing that of course looks like a joke on the topo map, but is actually far from trivial. Okay, so I think Centennial Spring should be somewhere down in the corner of this next canyon. I have to look at the map to see exactly where it's supposed to be, but that's the general idea at least. Wow, this is another dense stand of Joshua trees. Close to the spring, there's an old cabin there. Unfortunately, the old cabin, I'm pretty sure it's outside of the wilderness area. I seem to recall I need to go up over this ridge, so I want to stay in the wilderness area. It's sort of obnoxious, but I'll do it for science. Here's the shack from the back. Looks like someone hung up a white piece of clothes on the back to dry out. Anyway, I'll have to come back this way too above these rocks. I think now, if I recall correctly, I could head straight to the spring from here. It should be somewhere up this way. Well, of all the ridiculous things I've done to stay in the wilderness, that wasn't so bad, going over that little hill with the rocks. Looks pretty dry. Or it could be, it's probably actually up there where all those bushes are. That would make more sense. Okay, well, we have lots of trees over here. That's a good sign. Still following the burrow trail. Well, there's a damp patch of ground. Looks like I might need to hunt a little bit. There's a hole in the ground here. Looks pretty dry. There's a little rocked in hole over there. That could be a place to look. Aha! There it is. Doesn't look like the best water in the world, but I'll take it. Only got to drink it for a day. Unfortunately, now that I've been around the spring a little longer, I can see there's an oily stick on the surface, and it has a distinctly sulfury smell. Let's try and get it below the oil slick, though. Just weight that down. Well, we'll have a taste test in just a few seconds here. Moment of truth. Is it palatable? Oh! Well, that is a strong smell of rotten eggs. But you have to have a pretty high concentration of hydrogen sulfide before it's poisonous. I'm sure it's fine. Okay, well, we're watered up. Okay. Here are my footprints coming up. So now the question is just, what kind of canyon is this? Is this canyon one I can navigate easily and quickly get up 2 miles? Or is it going to be a boulder-filled nightmare? Yeah, so the basement of the Coso Range is all made of granites of some sort or another. I think mostly in the 85 million year old range. Pretty canyon. Now it's not so brushy. Nice big boulders. Easy places to walk. Big boulders here. Looks like I might have to scramble through them a tiny bit. Oof! Let's see what's the best way here. Can I just step from here to here? Well, every step I do tonight, I don't have to do tomorrow morning. I have plenty of stuff to do tomorrow. More miles tomorrow within the day. Okay, this is getting more continuously bouldery here. Anyway, I'm still going. It's dark. I'm gonna keep pushing as long as I can. Here at my camp last morning. Pros and cons about making breakfast this early. On the plus side, the Nutella is so cold, it actually chipped out of the container, so I was very efficient at getting the last bit of Nutella out of the container. The hard part is it can be very hard to spread that because it's like basically solid as a rock. Because it's, I haven't looked at the thermometer, but it's presumably in the mid-20s again. Here I am at my campsite. I camped last night. So I'm fairly far up the canyon. I camped behind this nice pinyon pine, which you're only going to be able to really see by its silhouette, but it was a nice windbreak. The wind's actually mostly died down now, which is nice. But when I was coming up this canyon at night, I could see it was starting to whiten out. I was like, okay, I'm almost where I'm supposed to camp. Then the wind just hit me around this corner. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to retreat behind this nice tree and camp behind that where it was not as windy. So I'm probably like a couple tenths of a mile short of where I was ideally supposed to camp, but I don't think a couple tenths of a mile are going to make too much of a difference. Yeah, just broke down my last camp. I'm ready to get home. I'm ready to get to the Sierras. I'm ready to stop at the convenience store in Olancha and buy some junk food, maybe a beer. So these thoughts will hopefully keep me propelled today. But I'm going to try and enjoy my time in the Coso Range because I think the Coso Range is going to be pretty cold. Oh, there's a patch of snow. Well, if I see a bigger snowbank, I might actually pack it into my water bottles. Okay, well, we're getting some more sunset colors right now. Oh, sun looks like it's trying to break through over there. Okay, so we've come up to the top of this ridge. I think our route is basically straight ahead through this gap up here. Okay, the sun has finally escaped those clouds and it's turned on full blast. I can start to feel its warmth. My toes are starting to defrost. Okay, so kind of the ridge. The Sierras are coming into view. So that peak right in front of us is Olancha Peak. That's where I'm heading. Should hopefully get to the base of that mountain before dark. Actually, just get a little panorama here of this Joshua Flat, studded with Joshua trees. Nice in the morning light here. Okay, now with this ridge, I think we've reached our highest elevation of the day in the Coso Range, just under 7,000 feet altitude. And so it's mostly downhill now until I get to the foot of the Sierras and have to climb a little bit up the alluvial fan. And that, my friend, is a Joshua tree. Look at that thing. That's massive. Might be the biggest one I've seen yet. Yeah, so you guys are looking at that red mountain over there and wondering, gee, that looks kind of like a volcano. Well, that's because it is. That's a cinder cone, probably produced by a sort of a spattering type eruption of where basalt lava came out and spattered in little bits that cooled down in the air enough to form solid little chunks called cinders, or tephra more appropriately, that then would have landed in the big pile there and oxidized to a red color. And so again, the Coso Range is an active volcanic field. I'm pretty sure that black range on the left, that black mountain on the left, I think was called Silver Mountain, that is capped by a basalt flow that's pretty young. I think this mountain over here with the flat top might also be a volcano of some sort. It sort of has the shape of a relatively thick lava, maybe like a rhyolite flow or something, a rhyolite dome. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe I'll be able to tell when we get a little closer. But yeah, lots of active volcanoes here. No crack of doom to throw a ring into, but you know, just about 15 kilometers south of here, there has been an active magma chamber that's been detected geophysically about 5 kilometers below the ground, which is currently not erupting anything, but it's heating up enough of the groundwater that the U.S. Navy has a geothermal power plant there that's generating 150 megawatts of power off of the heat coming up. And in principle, it could erupt at any time. It's going to give some warning. I haven't been feeling any earthquakes this morning, so it's not going to happen today. But one of these days, maybe not in our lifetimes, but there's going to be some more volcanoes, at least to the south. Right here, there's no magma detected right below where I'm standing. So there's probably not going to be a little volcano popping up right here, sadly. But I can dream. Heading a little canyon here with some young basalt flows, making these black cliffs. I don't plan to follow this canyon very long. My plan is basically to escape off to the left as soon as I get past the end of this row of basalt cliffs. It's got these pieces of, looks like it's got quartz and feldspars. It's probably plucked out of the granite, because this was intruded up through the, Coso Range here is made out of granite. Yeah, here's actually a whole big chunk. See, this is a big chunk of granite inside the basalt. We call this a xenolith of granite. Sometimes xenoliths like this can be really useful for determining what the basalt came up through. You also see it's a little darker around the edge of the xenolith. That's because the granite was originally cold when it dropped into the basalt, so it chilled a little bit of basalt around the edge into a more glassy, darker basalt. Anyway, in this case, xenoliths aren't super useful because we know that there's a granite here underground, because we were just walking across it all morning. But in some cases where volcanic rocks cover everything up, so you can't see the basement rocks anymore, as we call them, then xenoliths like that can be really useful for telling what it was going on underground. And in some cases, xenoliths come up from much deeper. The granite here is, well, I'm not sure how deep the granite goes. You could easily go 30 kilometers deep here, actually, because that's what happens in the Sierras. Here's some more of these nice granite xenoliths. But in some cases, you can get, if the lava is, or the magma is coming up from deep enough within the earth, it could bring up chunks of the mantle or the lower crust, and xenoliths can often give you, you know, it's much cheaper than than making a drill hole, is just look for some xenoliths. Sometimes you need to do a little bit of geochemistry on them to figure out what depth they came from, to get a better idea of what's going on below the ground. But xenolith studies are an important technique for figuring out what's going underground. Coming up over a little rise here. Oh, that's basically the pass there that I'm heading for. Just a tiny little pass. And I already went over my high point in the Coso Range earlier. And incidentally, at this moment, I've reached another kilometer stone. 800 kilometers. Anyway, we'll have a view of it. And it's hard to say. I don't think this particular cinder cone has been dated, but the fact it still has a sort of a cinder cone shape suggests to me that it's probably no more than a couple million years old. But hard to say. Okay, well, we're coming over this little tiny pass, and the Sierras are popping back out again. This should bring us into the head of Vermilion Canyon, which we'll follow for the next mile or two before we'll leave it for a ridge. Ceremonial moment, I'm eating the last piece of the roughly 9 pounds of dried fruit I brought for this trip. Well, that's the last of my snacks till I get to that convenience store, so I still have lunch. But more reason to keep walking. Glad I don't have to climb up Olancha on this trip. Looks kind of snowy and forbidding. It's just really frigid air coming up this canyon. You'd think I was like above 6,000 feet in the dead of winter or something like that. Oh, no, it's March. It's not the dead of winter. It's the, in Southern California, we call this spring. Go faster to warm up, but my right ankle is not cooperating. It's a little unhappy. But that's okay. It's only got to survive till the end of the day. We're just coming off around this last little basalt ridge here. And I think it's going to be time to leave this canyon. We're going to head across this ridge over to the next ridge and head down the next ridge over to the left. Okay, we've actually reached a milestone here. 500 miles. 500 miles now completed. Now again, that's according to my original route. Now there have been some small modifications to it, and the GPS has generally been giving me an extra mile a day or so, but I haven't been counting all of that because I haven't actually had my GPS track on 100% of the time, and I'll just have to analyze my GPS records and fill in the gaps from Google Earth and come up with the best estimate for the actual distance I've walked. But at any rate, for official celebration purposes, I'm saying I've now crossed 500 miles. The good news is that means it's only about 12 miles to the base of that mountain over there. So, getting closer. 12 miles is still not super short distance, and I still have to walk back to my car, or my parents' car, after that, which will add 2 more miles I need to walk, but getting there. This right ankle is not going to be happy about this. That I can say for sure. Ugh. Sorry, this is the sulfur water now. If you drink it down quickly, it only tastes a little bad at first, but then like a few seconds later, it hits your taste buds like, oh, I just drank that dirty sock water. So now that I look at it, this steep mountain front that we just came down is a very straight mountain front. I'm pretty sure that's a normal fault scarp, probably from a active or more recently active normal fault that's lifting the Coso Range up here and dropping down this block. Another sign of that is that that side is all, well, it's mostly granite and some other dark rocks in there, but old rocks. Here there's still some granite next to me right here, but all the rest of the mountain that I left is bits of this marine limestone and mud, like we were seeing on the other side of the Coso Range. You know, some sort of Paleo Owens Lake deposits that have clearly been uplifted by a different normal fault if they started out in the bottom of the valley. And so I think the little bench we're walking on right here is probably actually the unconformity. But anyway, so the granite unconformity, if the unconformity surface is here on this side, on that side it's been uplifted to the extent that it's been eroded away. So another sign that there's a big fault here that's uplifted that side and down dropped this side. I was coming up to the top of this little spur on the side of the mountain here. You can see this is this lacustrine limestone. You can tell by the way it weathers. The sort of pitted and etched surface, again, is classic of limestone because it dissolves in rainwater. Slowly. Over geologic time. Okay. I'm up on this ridge. Kind of Olancha is now in sight. And the problem is I really want to be on this next ridge. And there's no way to do that other than to contour around the side of the hill. Which probably would have been easier if I just went over the top of the stupid hill in the first place, but oh well. Well, the slope's not as bad as it could be. And it's still one of these slopes where you slide down half a step for every step over and have to step back up. So even though I'm going approximately horizontally, it feels like I'm climbing a mountain with every step. I think I can just go straight down here now. So I just saw this little berm ahead above me. It's not shown on the map, but I think there might be the remains of a road here. I thought that looked like an artificial hill of dirt there. There's a bunch of roads up here. From what I could read, it seemed like there used to be a bunch of old pumice mines up here. Presumably mining pumice erupted out of the Coso volcanic field and stuck in these sedimentary layers here. So none of these rocks look like pumice, but it's all just because the map says pumice mine. Doesn't mean it was actually pumice mine, or it might have been something they commercially sold as, quote, pumice, but wasn't actually pumice. But anyway, having a road is going to make this a lot easier. This is still a designated wilderness area. So presumably any mining here was ceased already by the time they declared it a wilderness. But it should be pretty easy walking from here on out, actually. So just gonna, I don't know if I'm gonna 100% stick to the roads. I might take a shortcut once or twice. Sometimes on foot you can do things faster that you can't do on a car. They may have actually just been mining this volcanic ash, which is what some of these white layers are. Volcanic ash, especially when it's altered, can alter to various useful types of clays or materials that can be used as absorbents, like in kitty litter. It's hard to say exactly what they were mining here. Or zeolite minerals, which can be used for filters and absorbents and things like that. It's so much easier walking on a road than cross country. That's all I gotta say. Yeah, I guess I could see why there are no cars driving down this road anymore. I think this would be a challenge even in a Jeep. Drinking the disgusting sulfur water reminds me of the scene from the end of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, where Dumbledore has to drink the poison potion out of the bowl to get the Horcrux amulet locket thingy. You know, the only way to get it out is to drink the poison. I feel that that's sort of like where I am with right now. Only way to get through this is to drink the poison. Well, here's another little washout across the road. Well, the time has come, I think, to leave this road and continue out on this ridge to find the corner of the Coso Wilderness. Actually, before I leave the wilderness, I'm going to stop for one last wilderness lunch. Eat my campfire bread and peanut butter. That doesn't get better. Ugh. The GPS says we've reached the west edge of the Coso Range wilderness. So we're leaving the last of our desert wildernesses. We're heading towards the increasingly ominous Sierra Nevada mountains and the Golden Trout wilderness. Nature can't send me away without one more last, well, hopefully it's one more last, nasty canyon. This one actually looks sort of fun. It's all full of sand. It's got these little cliffs, and it's almost parallel to the direction I'm going, although I am not staying in a nasty little canyon like this. No way. I can get out here, this caliche. Okay, there's just this little canyon within a canyon to cross. That doesn't look too bad. Little slip there. And here it is. Here it's got tire tracks on it, but that's okay. We're out of the wilderness area. So from here until the Los Angeles Aqueduct is a mile past the town of Olancha. I just got a nice road to walk on. There you go. Now you can see it's straight all the way through. This gate, I believe, marks the end of public Bureau of Land Management land and the beginning of privately held land. But the lack of a gate reinforces the notion that this road almost certainly has a public right-of-way along it. Well, we've entered our last dune field, the Olancha Dunes. I think most of the dunes are off to the right. This is just the very edge that's crept over this road. Okay, well, there we go for the dunes, basically. So from here, I think it's just another mile or so to the town. I might just take one more sip and then dump out the rest of my nasty water now. Figure I can walk the last mile without no point carrying that extra few pounds. Well, we've arrived the bustling town of Olancha. Oh, pavement. Oh, dogs. Hello. Hey, dogs. Woof, woof. You're very fluffy. I know you probably don't get a lot of walking visitors here. Well, I just have to cross the highway. I think we're good to go now. There's a historical marker here. Farley's Olancha Mill. Built a processing mill in 1860. But yeah, so the town of Olancha was originally founded in 1860. I guess there was a mill at this site right here. And it was a mining town for the 19th century, and then basically since then it survived on as a road stop along what has since become Highway 395. First place I've been able to buy food for 500 miles. Okay, let's see. Crystal Geyser is made locally. That seems like the kind to get. See, that's the picture of Mount Olancha right there. I have to remember how to behave in public now. All these options. It's a little overwhelming. Okay, well, I was really tempted to get hot food, but I just don't have time because I need to make it to the mountain and back in time to get picked up and go somewhere, so go home. Well, ice cream. Something else I've had on the wall. Well, if the wizard hat was the strangest thing they noticed about me, I'd be lucky. Oh well. I think I meant to take that off. It does look a little bit ridiculous, but what can you do? This is the Los Angeles Aqueduct. So this was completed in 1913 and brings water to Los Angeles. So basically, in those times, the city of Los Angeles bought up a lot of the land and water rights all throughout the Owens Valley here and all the way up to Mono Lake. And then they built the aqueduct to export the water. And it was upgraded quite a bit in 1940, 1970. So probably the concrete lining here probably does not date to 1912. But anyway, it's an aqueduct that's attracted a lot of controversy, even violence, including Owens Valley residents dynamiting the aqueduct early in its history. And so we're about to come up to the old railroad grade of the Lone Pine branch of the Southern Pacific. So I believe that wooden platform there is a loading platform for, I'm not quite sure what, maybe cattle onto the railroad. So we'll cross the railroad grade right up here where this row of rocks is. But so this branch of the Southern Pacific Railroad was originally built in 1912 in order to bring construction materials for the aqueduct. So it's no coincidence that it was built a year before the aqueduct, because you need a lot of concrete and piping and all sorts of random stuff like that to build an aqueduct. This must be the actual grade of the railroad, because that's where the loading platform ends there. So I'm just walking straight towards the base of the mountain basically here. I have sort of a point picked out I'm heading towards. Not anticipated. The fence here. I thought from the map this was going to be in BLM land, and there shouldn't be any fences. Yeah. I think that's going to hold. I don't do this as often as Tom Davies. I can't say I've never done it. Most of the barbed wire fences I climb are old ones that have partially fallen down and have big gaps in them. Maybe this area of disturbed ground here is where they've recently buried a new aqueduct pipe with the intention of putting the aqueduct underground in this segment so they don't have to have evaporation losses. Looks like there's a second fence I need to cross up here. Oh. I can't imagine having to do that if it was still fully loaded. 70 pounds. Okay. You can tell that big floods come down this way from time to time. See, this tree is a driftwood from way up there in the mountains. So are all these rocks. Well, they're not driftwood, but all these rocks have been carried down by debris flows in days past. Oh, yeah, that's tiny. I didn't even have to jump over this. I will stop and wash my hands though, because I got grease on them from that barbed wire fence. So the water won't take off grease, but the trick is dirt will. So I'll rub my hands in the dirt first to degrease. And also that way the dirt won't go directly into the creek, it'll just stay in the dirt here. It's also abrasive, so it gets the stuff, and then wash the dirt off, and any grease will come off with it. Actually, most of the grease will have already come off at this point. Nice creek though. And, too bad I don't have more time to tarry. So I think Olancha Creek should actually be the last significant obstacle I have to pass. It should just be alluvium from here on. Hopefully I've really passed all my obstacles, because I'm breaking out the tall boy. Seriously, I don't actually advocate drinking while hiking, normally speaking. I want to say I did drink at least half a liter out of that bottle of water first. Beer is no substitute for hydration. Okay, well here's the real section corner, which marks the boundary of the wilderness area too. U.S. General Land Office survey, 1919. Okay, so now we've passed the section marker. We're officially in the Golden Trout Wilderness. So you count success as making it across the Mojave Desert wildernesses and getting to the contiguous wilderness of the Sierra Nevada. We've made it. At this point, we could continue in the wilderness all the way to Tioga Pass without crossing a single wilderness gap from here. I'd completely gotten my route that I would have stayed 89% in the wilderness from the Mexican border to here. I probably fell short by that by a couple percent, so I'm probably at like 87% or something like that, but I'm going to still count that as a solid achievement. But as a geologist, you're not to the mountain until you touch the bedrock. So I got another half mile or so to go for the base of the mountain. I'm just going to head for what looks closest. Oh, this is gonna be fun. I'm always up for a good boulder dash. Nothing like a good boulder dash to end the day. So I'm starting to get excited now. Almost there. This 3-kilometer high, well, in some places, escarpment of the Sierra Nevada mountains here is the product of a giant normal fault. It's uplifting the Sierra Nevada and dropping down Owens Valley here. Now the reasons for that are complex. It's probably a combination of basin and range extension due to gravitational spreading of the basin and range, which is relatively high altitude and wants to spread out like pancake batter. Partly it's probably due to transtension related to right lateral shear along the San Andreas Fault. The entire Sierra Nevada block is rotating clockwise, actually because it's being dragged by the San Andreas Fault on the south end, and that is causing extension in this area. And the third reason may be that a bunch of dense rock way under the crust in the mantle is dripping off right now and being replaced by less dense crust that's allowing the mountains to pop back up. But whatever the reason, it's made a massive mountain that we can only see the bottom of from here. And the rocks here are, loosely speaking, granites, technically granodiorites mostly, plutonic rocks. So these are magmas that intruded into the crust in the Mesozoic area, the age of the dinosaurs. A lot of the stuff on the eastern side here intruded around 85 million years ago in these massive supervolcanoes, much like a lot of the granites in the Mojave Desert. Okay, so we've just crossed a topographic gradient from flat to steep, so probably right there is where the normal fault is, at the base of the Sierra Nevada mountains. It's an active fault, so there can be an earthquake at any time that just pops up the Sierra Nevada. Typical earthquake would pop us up 5 meters. Now I've been watching these rocks from a distance. I think these ones are loose boulders, but I think that big one in the back, it looked like it followed the same, it had the same alignment as the boulders behind it. So I think that's actually bedrock. You know, having crossed the normal fault, we're already in the Sierra Nevada mountains, but as a bedrock geologist who studies granites, I need to touch a piece of the granite that's actually still in place. It's an original position, well, just a boulder that slid down the slope later in some landslide. So here's the end. Bam! Crossed the Mojave Desert to the Sierra Nevada. Woo! 512 miles, 823 kilometers, 21.7 or 8 kilometers of cumulative elevation gain, 35 days, 100 pounds of dried fruit. Anyway, yeah, I kind of need to get back. There's no roads here. We're in the Golden Trout Wilderness, so I still got 2 miles of walking ahead of me, and the sun is getting lower, so gotta keep moving. Well, it was a beautiful day, beautiful trip all in all. Well, so after completing a big mission, YouTubers often like to philosophize a bit, so I'll join in with that. You know, I guess what I'm going to say is, if you have a passion that excites you, follow it, do it. You know, you might have to plan a while. I've been planning this trip since, I think, 2013 at least, if not earlier. So that was 9 years of planning for this trip. So, you know, yeah, you can't just like skip work and like go hike across the Mojave Desert. But maybe if you plan for it for a decade, you can figure something out. If you guys have been following this entire series, hopefully some of the things that excite you include things like desert conservation or maybe geology. Now, if you're interested in geology, you know, there are a lot of careers in geology, it turns out. I teach at Cal Poly Pomona, and you know, most of all our students, not all of them, but very high proportion of our students all get jobs as geology professionals doing something or other, or at least something related that uses their skills. Sorry, doing a little boulder dash here while I talk. So, you know, it's not a bad field to get into if you're in high school. I encourage you to apply to a geology program. If you're in the Los Angeles area, I encourage you to apply to our geology program at Cal Poly Pomona. I'll put a link in the description of where you can apply. And you know, this message isn't just to high school students either. A lot of people come to geology as a second career. I've taught people in my classes who are older than me. Also, you know, maybe you don't need a degree, maybe you're older and you know, you've already completed most of your career at this point. It's a little too late to switch fields. Well, you know, we also offer classes via extended university. You don't have to enroll as a full-time student. You just can take a few classes here and there. Look for our College of Extended University offerings. Go do that adventure. Start planning now. I'd like to thank all the people who supported me through this project. Most notably my wife, who's been taking care of my toddler this whole time and has been supporting me being gone and not helping her out at all, even though she has a full-time job that's more demanding than mine, to be quite honest. I'd like to thank my parents who have dropped off supplies several times and dropped me off. I'd like to thank the various people at the university who have supported me doing this non-traditional sabbatical project. Thanks to GeoWizard Tom Davies for the inspiration to film a trip like this. Thank you for my Geological Society of America field trip collaborators for putting up with my reduced communication while in the field. Thank you to Charles Dang and Trapmaker for letting me use their music. Thank you also to Arthur Winer of the Cal Poly Pomona Music Department for letting me use some of his music. Thanks to Scott and Robert for joining me for part of the trip and bringing me supplies. Jason at the CSU Desert Center Study Center for letting me stash some stuff. Thank you to my son Ian for putting up with me being gone for 5 weeks. Hopefully you'll at least understand, if not appreciate, why I did this when you're older. Thank you to Dan Griggs for helping me with the media strategy. Thank you to all of you who have watched my videos and recommended them to your friends. Okay, see you on some other adventure. Yeah, I still have a ways to walk though. You just got to dig a 6-inch hole and then bury it when you're done. They say squatting's supposed to be better anyway. Note that this trowel never touches anything but dirt, or you're doing it wrong. Very, very wrong.